Welcome to St Cat's Chats, the official podcast of St Catherine's British School in Athens. Each episode, we sit down with guests from our community and beyond to explore the role education has played in their lives, the impact of the school values of care, dedication, curiosity and integrity, as well as the intellectual and academic lessons that St Catherine's brings to life. Thank you for joining us.
Hello everybody and a warm welcome to St Cat's Chats, and it's a delight to have not only a medical expert but also a student of the school with us today, and we're here to talk about type 1 diabetes, and we've got an amazing event coming up on the 18th of November 2025. Get our guests to introduce themselves. So Myrto, over to you as our student guest. Why don't you say a little bit about you?
Hello, I'm Myrto, and I'm a student in Year 9 at St. Catherine's. I've been living with type 1 diabetes for about 6 years now, and I'm just here to share a bit about my journey and detail this event that I'm doing next Tuesday on the 18th. And I am very happy to be here today and grateful for all of you guys for listening to my story.
Wonderful, great, thank you. So,
hello to all of you. My name is Dr. Ploutarchos Tzoulis. I'm an associate professor of endocrinology and diabetes at University College London. Having looked after people with type 1 diabetes for longer than 20 years, it's a great pleasure for me to take part in these events, which I think probably is the first time an event like this will take place in a Greek school. Also, I have been member of St. Catherine's community for 9 years now, because I have 2 children, my daughter at Year 9 and my son at Year 5. So we're really looking forward to seeing you in a few days' time.
Wonderful, great, thank you very much indeed. So Myrto, when did first of all, maybe talk about your St Catherine's journey. When did it start? Have you been here since little tiny, or what?
Yeah, I've been here since nursery, so
great.
Pretty long time.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And what are the sort of elements do you like about school? What are the things that really fire you up?
I'm a generally curious person, so I really enjoy learning, and I love the environment here and the teachers, and I feel like it's very inclusive. It's a very supportive environment, and I just generally like the entire community and everything that we get to do at school.
Great, wonderful. So let's talk about your sort of medical journey in many respects, which of course is this about. So tell me about how you maybe first found out about your type 1, and maybe what were some of your reactions back then?
So I was diagnosed when I was 7 years old, and it was a very difficult time for me because I was so young that I couldn't really understand anything that was happening. Thankfully, I had an amazing support system. I had my family who would always support me, and I kind of learned how to navigate through it. Especially now, I've been trying to become a bit more independent in handling diabetes. But my childhood was very much not a normal childhood per se, because there was this added factor that I had to think about a lot of the time. It made many things more difficult for me as a young child, and especially in school as well. Like in the early days, I would also not have such a big support system at school in regards of people who could understand what I was going through.
Yeah. And tell me about that sort of start of that process in terms of how that diagnosis happened. Were there things that were happening in terms of your symptoms? You were feeling tired or whatever else, and suddenly thought something doesn't feel right. Mum and Dad were sort of saying that maybe it doesn't feel right. How did that sort of come about?
So I had some symptoms before for maybe a few years before. So it was pre-diabetes. And that was things like I was very thirsty all the time. I was very tired. Sometimes I would feel faint. Maybe my eyesight would get a bit blurry. And just generally kind of symptoms. I mean, I don't recall a lot of them because I was very young at the time. Yeah. But those are some things that kind of stood out to me.
And what did it feel like when you had the sort of diagnosis? And now, of course, you know a lot about type 1, of course, but this is almost, particularly at that age, almost a step into the unknown, wasn't it? A doctor is telling you as a 7-year-old, you've got type 1 diabetes. How did you feel at that time?
Yeah, definitely. That was quite an experience. But I often felt very confused, and there was an unknown factor to it, of course, because as such a young child, I didn't even know what diabetes was until then. So it was definitely a learning experience for me. But as I said before, also I had my parents who would help me a lot along the way. But generally, I think it was quite a hard time for
Yeah,
me.
a bit scary, wasn't it? Probably.
A little bit, yeah.
Great. And before we sort of dive into maybe your experience of being a type 1 in any environment, in fact, maybe if we turn to you, Sarah, in terms of some of the science of it, what is it? Now, we could have people who know a lot about it in the audience. We could have people who know nothing about type 1 diabetes, and there's often a bit of confusion, type 1, type 2, what does that mean? If we could give a basic guide, I'm a geography teacher, speak to me as if I know nothing about diabetes.
Okay, as most people actually, I think they don't know anything about diabetes, and or they have completely misunderstood the concept. So diabetes means having higher levels of blood glucose, blood sugar in the bloodstream. In type 1 diabetes, the main problem is that beta cells in the pancreas, which are in charge of producing insulin, they produce very little to no insulin. And insulin is essential. All of us continuously produce small amounts of insulin, and whenever we eat something, we produce a large amount of insulin in order to have our blood glucose in a very tight range. So when the cells stop producing insulin, then you have type 1 diabetes. I think it's very important, and this is one of the common misconceptions. Type 1 diabetes is very different from type 2 diabetes. Anyone can get type 1 diabetes and is completely unrelated to lifestyle choices or to how many sweets someone eats or to the weight. This is an autoimmune condition. It's much rarer compared to type 2 diabetes. The treatment is different. So for type 1 diabetes, the only treatment is insulin, which actually is in a injection or in the pump. So you cannot take a tablet. It takes a lot of time and effort on day-to-day basis. But I think one of the important messages is that living with type 1 diabetes, as millions of people live, especially nowadays with all the technologies, you can live a long and healthy life as long as you monitor yourself, you take the right medications, and you work closely with the healthcare professionals.
Great. Okay. And in terms of that sort of science of it, let's just go back a little bit, because I sometimes hear things around having a hypo or too high sugar, too high insulin. What does that mean in terms of sugar levels and how people with type 1 can adjust and make sure they're in the right zone?
Yes. One of the main characteristics in type 1 diabetes is that blood sugar can essentially go up and down very rapidly and very often in a surprising manner someone does not expect. Because there is no buffer in the body of most people living with type 1 diabetes, even a very slight event can essentially change the balance one or the other way. And it's very important to be aware, because some people, I think, tend to dismiss it, that if you have a hypo, so essentially this is very low levels of blood sugar in your bloodstream, essentially you can lose consciousness, you could end up in the hospital, it is very serious. So that's why people with type 1, they tend to monitor themselves and they should very closely. And the opposite, if the blood sugar is high, a lot of people are feeling tired, it affects the concentration, their ability to take decisions at that stage. So this takes a lot of work and it can be very unpredictable.
And how does sort of diet and exercise play a part in the science of it? We'll come on to your experiences in a moment. How does that sort of happen in terms of what you can't eat, and particularly as children are growing up, wanting to maybe have foods that maybe they shouldn't?
Yeah. So first of all, as I said before, but I think it's important to repeat the message, diet and exercise or lack of exercise or poor diet are not the causes of type 1 diabetes. When someone is living with type 1 diabetes, we know that physical exercise helps, like it helps all of us to be in a good physical condition. With regards to diet, again, someone can eat anything the person likes. Obviously, moderation, like all of us. At the end of the day, depending on what the person eats, takes different amounts of insulin. And so essentially saying to someone who has a type 1 diabetes that you shouldn't eat this sweet because it will cause a very high blood sugar, probably you shouldn't eat a sweet every day, but all of us shouldn't. But now and again, you could definitely have a sweet.
You are listening to St. Cat's Chats, the official podcast of St. Catherine's British School.
Great, brilliant, fantastic. So, Myrto, in terms of, course, you're growing up with this, from the age of 7, and how did you sort of find that in terms of maybe what other people were doing, and how did your peer group, because that's really important, isn't it? Get to know your condition. I can think a very good friend of mine's got type 1 that I used to work with for many years. And you get used to it, of course you do. Now I was a bit older, so it was a bit easier. How did that do in terms of some of those early years?
So a lot of my classmates didn't really know what it meant, especially in the beginning. Now I would like to think that they have a general idea. I don't think that they really understand it. I think there are definitely some things that they may not be so sure about. But what I always say is that I'm very happy to answer any questions. And there are a lot of people who have come up to me and asked me, hey, how does this work? And of course, I'm very happy to answer and to educate anyone who has any questions or is curious.
Great. Well, of course, you spoke in assembly the other day, so I know that 3-year groups know all about it. And how does that work in terms of your day or your week? How do you sort of manage that? Are you now you have to be very organised. You have to be very, very efficient. As I was saying to Dad earlier, that you are the only year 11 and below student who is allowed to have their phone on them. So those things are. So how do you manage things like that in terms of your insulin levels or how do you do that during your day?
So in terms of school life, there is definitely an added factor of complexity that I have to take into account. So there, for example, when it's time for me to eat lunch, I have to check to see what insulin dose I have to take. Sometimes there may be instability in my blood sugar levels where it may be too high or it may be too low, and I may need to correct with some insulin or eat something like some honey or drink some juice. But there are many hundreds of decisions in my daily life that I have to take. Many of which are quite urgent, and that's something that people don't really understand, is the importance of all these decisions and really how critical they are to my short-term and even more so long-term health.
Great. And how does technology help in terms of maybe even in your years? I'll come on to you, so in terms of maybe your breadth of experience, but in terms of the time where you've been with type 1, how has technology changed to hopefully help you?
Technology has been really useful throughout my journey with diabetes. When I was first diagnosed, I was using insulin pens, and now I'm using a pump, which is a little device that I have on my body that delivers insulin directly, and that is why I also use my phone to deliver insulin using my pump. Then I have a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor, which gives me glucose readings, which are also 15 minutes behind. So they're not real-time readings as well.
So does therefore the app on your phone is tracking your glucose levels? It's also, you're able to press a button and that gives you wherever your pump is to give you your bloodstream a certain amount of insulin?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's my glucose monitor.
Yeah.
And it gives me readings so I know where my blood sugar is at, what I need to do. And technology has really been a very useful tool in my daily life.
Great. And how have you found in your career? You must have now, in terms of age, I wouldn't dare be so vulgar as to suggest the time scale in which you've been working with this, but I would imagine in your career, sir, you've probably seen it from people. I certainly remember people lifting up their shirts and doing all sorts of different measurements and stuff. How have you seen that sort of change over time?
Essentially, we have been experiencing a revolution over the last 10 to 15 years. By the way, still the vast majority of people, especially in Greece, they're on injections and they're pricking the finger. So we're discussing about 4 to 6 injections per day and pricking your finger to check the blood sugar, anything between 3 and 10 times. So most people are still on this, let's say, old-fashioned regimen.
Okay.
We know it's a matter of time, and in a few years' time, we expect everyone to be on a new system, but there are barriers, and also essentially there can be also resistance from the doctor, because for us also there is a lot of technology, is a lot of data to handle. So this applies also to us,
of course,
not only to people living with diabetes. Then the first revolution has to do with the pump. So essentially you have a small device attached to your body, which is giving you all the time insulin, and you can have different rhythms and different levels of insulin for every hour. And you had also a sensor, but you had continuous monitoring. You had to look at the sensor, take the decision. The last one, which have been waiting for decades, we thought it would never happen, but now it's happening in real life, is what we used to call artificial pancreas, closed loop. So essentially, with the sensor, the pump and the sensor are connected. There is vast amount of data it has access, and it takes a lot of decisions on its own in an automatic manner. This is what our pancreas is doing when someone does not have diabetes. So it is a revolution. It can be challenging. It can also cause a lot of financial pressures for a lot of people, but now we're addressing them. But also, not only people living with it, healthcare professionals, even doctors, even diabetologists, very often they don't know all these practicalities because, we're doctors. We're not used to so much technology, I can tell you.
Great. And through your day as well, are there things that you find, Myrto, that where you think, oh, I can't do that? Or you're thinking, actually, I've now worked my sort of practice to make sure I can do everything I want to do. But have you felt in the past that there's been barriers, or I don't feel as though I can do this because of diabetes? Or have you found, I've been able to find workarounds?
I don't think that I've experienced anything that I think that diabetes limits me in any way. I like to say that diabetes is a part of who I am. And I'm just for some certain things, I may need some additional help, maybe from my parents or from a teacher or something like that. But I can do everything, basically. I can play sports, I can go on trips.
Great, wonderful. Well, I can think of certainly some fairly high-profile sports people in the UK with diabetes, and certainly from a UK school point of view, we would always try and make sure we flash these people up and say, wow, I'm a big rugby fan. Henry Slade plays for my team, Exeter, and plays for England Rugby, and he is type 1, and he's very out there in terms of supporting that community. So I think he's a really good role model, certainly for a lot of young people at the moment in the UK. Let's talk about the event on Tuesday, the 18th of November at St Catherine's in the theatre. Tell us about what the whole idea for this event. Why are we doing it? What's happening?
Okay, so the event is called Who's That Type 1? And this was an idea that I had maybe for even a year now, where I really wanted to do something to strengthen the diabetes community and to raise awareness, because I've learned that a lot of people don't really understand what diabetes means. So I really wanted to do something that could raise awareness, as I said before, but also educate people and maybe clarify some misconceptions or teach people some new things that they wouldn't have learned otherwise. So that's kind of where the idea for this event arose.
And you as a medical professional, how do you think this event will help in terms of spreading the message?
I think, first of all, the part of awareness about type 1 diabetes amongst students, amongst parents, amongst teachers and members of school staff is very important. In addition to the part of type 1 diabetes, I think in my mind it's very important that we can communicate some generic messages which apply to a lot of people, a lot of students, essentially to all of us, I would say, regardless of type 1 diabetes, is about inclusion, is about empathy, about being open. Most of people, they cannot imagine how many people around us have type 1 diabetes or a different chronic condition. And apart from very close friends and members of her family, they have not disclosed any information to any of them. So I think it's about openness, it's about empathy, it's about sending the message that we should not be judgmental. And nowadays, and I think this is very important and very close to my heart, and this applies even to doctors and nurses, we don't have diabetic people, we don't have asthmatic people, we don't have dyslexic people. We have people who live with a condition. All of us have different strengths, they have different challenges. So I think this is very important for all of us, for the community and the society.
Absolutely, great. Couldn't agree more. And so there's going to be a lot of awareness. People are going to come away knowing a lot more about type 1, which is fantastic. And you're showing great courage by standing up, which is absolutely wonderful. And we're hugely proud of you. So who else is going to be at this event? What other people are going to be at the event that are going to play a part in this particular occasion?
So I'm giving a keynote speech in the beginning, and then me and Mr. Tzoulis are going to have a fireside chat, which is kind of detailing the scientific side of diabetes, as well as the experience, my experience with it, in terms of daily life and kind of the misconceptions and everything like that. Then there's going to be a panel with you and the Minister of Education. And I think that about sums it up.
Great. And certainly at that time, me and the Minister of Education, we're going to be talking about actually the role of any sort of health education in schools. Certainly my experience in a school setting, I've known many children with type 1 diabetes in my time. Some have dealt with it better than others, it has got to be said, and some staff deal with it better than others because we're all people and therefore we have different takes on things. So for me, it's a huge privilege for us as a school to be able to host this occasion, and I know it's in partnership with the Stanford Club of Greece, which is a fantastic organisation, and we're hugely grateful to them for their support of that. But anything we can do as an institution to promote awareness, to promote the importance of celebrating the fact that we all have different things in our lives. Some are visual, some are not visual. And actually, I often say, wouldn't life be boring if we were all the same? And that could be lots of different ways of that. So we're very much looking forward to that. So very well done to you. And thank you very much indeed, sir, for everything that you're giving to it as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, hopefully we will see you at St. Catherine's on Tuesday the 18th. I'm going to say 6 o'clock. Start. It's going to be a fantastic event, lots going on, and hopefully you will come and support it. Thank you very much indeed. So we would love to see as many people at the event as possible. Do go to stanfordclub.gr, do reply to that. It'd be very good to get a bit of an idea of numbers, and everybody is welcome. So if you're a St. Catherine's student, if you're a student of any other school, please do reply, come along, it'd be lovely to see you there. Staff of St. Catherine's, of course, and parents of St. Catherine's, it'd be lovely to see you too. But of course, any parent and any teacher, you are very, very welcome to come along. Do go to that website to RSVP. It'd be lovely to see everybody there because we'll all be able to learn something. So hopefully we'll see as many of you as possible on Tuesday the 18th. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us on St. Cat's Chats. We hope today's discussion has sparked new ideas and inspired you. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to follow the podcast and share it with others. Until next time, remember, at St. Catherine's, we are a 3 to 103 school. You are always part of the St. Catherine's family. One campus, one community.